I stood on the cracked pavement of Willowbrook Avenue, where the city buses turn around before crawling back toward the glowing towers downtown. The afternoon blizzard had turned the street into a tunnel of swirling white, and every breath I took tasted of copper-cold metal. Snowflakes clung to my lashes like the wings of tiny moths, melting into tears that had nothing to do with the weather. My wool coat, cashmere, though no one here would know it, was already crusted with ice at the shoulders, and the satin lining stuck to my skin where my husband had yanked my arm so hard the sleeve ripped at the seam. Ezra's SUV idled at the curb, its hazard lights blinking like an accusation. He kept the engine running, heater roaring, but he leaned across the console to fling open the passenger door as though I were luggage he needed to toss into a connection flight. Quick, impersonal, final. "Get out, Odessa," he barked, eyes fixed. On the road ahead, jaw flexing like a machine press. "I'm late for the meeting, and I'm sick of your games. Take the bus. It's what your people do, right?" My people, I wondered. He meant the women who had knit themselves into the city's fabric with threadbare paychecks and recycled dreams. Women he swore he admired when he first met me, before his firm's letters of intent turned into gilded job offers and cocktail parties with investors who tasted like aged scotch and ambition. He used to say it with a fond grin. "You have grit, Des. You hustle." Today, the word grit sounded like dirt between his teeth. I tried once more, voice steady because I refused to let him hear it tremble. "Ezra, the weather report says the storm will trap buses for hours. We can talk when your temper cools. Just drive me home. You know I have the Henderson proposal to finalize tonight." "Then walk," he snapped. "Walk back to that fancy house and draft your perfect little proposal all by yourself. I'm done chauffeuring your ego." Chauffeuring. The irony scraped my tongue. I heard myself release the seatbelt, felt the metal tongue clang empty against the doorframe as though the car itself objected. I stepped into a knee-deep drift, my boots swallowed, snow spilling over the ankles in a wet shock. He didn't wait for me to close the door. The SUV fishtailed once, scattering slush, and lurched away in a spray of dirty ice crystals that coated my coat and the bus bench behind me. The sudden silence roared louder than the engine. Wind rattled the plexiglass shelter, posters for payday loans peeling at the corners. The digital timetable blinked delayed in red beside every route. People huddled under the shelter's meager awning, watching me the way diners watch an actress. Break character mid-performance, uncomfortable, hungry for drama, unable to look away. I squared my shoulders and joined them. A middle-aged nurse in scrubs offered a sympathetic half-smile. A teenager with purple headphones glanced at me over mirrored lenses, the neon reflection of his phone shimmering like a tiny aurora between us. None spoke. None needed to. Bus stop etiquette in winter. Share space, not stories. Minutes, maybe hours, bled together. My phone remained silent in my pocket. No apology text arriving. A ridiculous thought struck me. That Ezra might circle back. That the monstrous words were a vent for stress. I dismissed it. Ezra loved efficiency, not remorse. A memory surfaced, unbidden but bright, of our first date at a downtown food truck where we shared Cajun fries under the L tracks. He'd teased me then about the flecks of paprika on my lip, brushed them away with a thumb that lingered. "You deserve Michelin stars, but you enjoy the street smoke," he'd said, eyes soft. That Ezra had vanished somewhere behind conference room, glass walls and quarterly earnings. The man who left me here was sculpted by different hands. I sucked a breath that burned. I could call a rideshare. I could raise my arm and flag any passing cab willing to brave the drifts. But something deeper than pride anchored my feet. I wanted him to see what he had done. Wanted witnesses when the ice in his pulse thawed, and he realized the cruelty crawled further than his own reflection. My gaze followed the road's ghostly ribbon until taillights faded. In the stillness, a different swell rose, one I'd cultivated in secret, like a seedling under blackout cloth. The Henderson proposal Ezra mocked was not a hypothetical. It was the final puzzle piece in an acquisition I had engineered for 18 relentless months, an acquisition that would, at signing, make me one of the majority shareholders of Kingsley Haverton International, the logistic empire my late grandfather built, and the name I had quietly readopted during the preliminary filings. Ezra knew none of it. He saw my consulting firm as boutique, cute, hobbyist. He never asked why my phone lit up at dawn with London numbers or why my lawyers insisted on NDAs thicker than Bibles. His ignorance was deliberate. I had offered him glimpses. He had turned away, preferring the skin-deep narrative of himself as provider. Tonight, that narrative would fracture like ice on the river. A gust tugged my hair across my mouth. I gripped the bench's metal edge, let the cold bite through gloves until sensation blurred into numb determination. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the discreet app labeled simply K-Line. A chat bubble loaded, Operations Dispatch. I typed 2 words, Phase 1. Ticks turned blue in less than a second. A reply pulsed, Proceeding. ETA 15 minutes. Stay visible. Stay visible. I could manage that. The nurse's phone chimed with a delay notice. She cursed softly. The teenager shivered, though the bass from his headphones still bled into the air, tinny and defiant. I studied them and wondered what private storms each carried. Did the nurse's lover text goodbye at shift change? Did the boy's parents know he skipped lectures? Life stacked hidden narratives behind blank faces. 14 minutes later, a hush fell over the street like a held breath. The glare of headlights curved around the corner, not the flickering halogens of a city bus, but the steady, polished gleam of LED matrix lamps set into a grille that cost more than this entire block's monthly rent. The long hood, the gleaming, spirit of ecstasy ornament carving through the snow. There was no mistaking a Rolls-Royce Phantom, midnight blue under the sodium streetlights. Its massive tires crunched to a dignified stop directly in front of the shelter. Snowflakes danced in the halo of its running lights. The bus stop gathered an audible gasp. Even the timetable seemed to pause its red, blinking in awe. The rear door swung open. A liveried chauffeur emerged, impossibly crisp against the swirling chaos. His cap bore the silver crescent of Kingsley Haverton. He walked toward me with the measured grace of someone unruffled by weather or staring crowds. As he neared, recognition flickered in his eyes. No surprise, because this man, Carson, had driven my grandfather for a decade before I poached him last year. He offered a slight bow, one hand pressed to heart in old-world courtesy. "Madam Kingsley," he said, voice carrying over the wind like cultured steel. "Your vehicle awaits." The sound of my family name on the open street cracked something inside me. Fear, perhaps, or the last filament of doubt. I let it go, exhaling a plume of white. I took one step forward, and the scream of brakes shattered the tableau. Ezra's SUV skidded back into view, fishtailing onto the opposite shoulder, horn blaring. He leaped out, coatless, hair wild, face flushed with something I couldn't yet decipher. Panic, disbelief, or the dawning recognition that the world had tilted beyond his control. He shouted my name, the syllables ragged. Carson positioned himself between us like a sentinel. Commuters pressed back, eyes wide. In the wash of headlights and swirling snow, I saw Ezra's gaze ricochet from the Rolls to my posture, to Carson's. Deference, and back again. He opened his mouth, but whatever accusation formed was devoured by the howl of wind and the Phantom's quiet authority. My pulse thundered with icy fire. For the first time since stepping out of his car, I felt truly warm. I lifted my chin, met Ezra's stare, and spoke the words I'd rehearsed only in the quiet corridors of imagination. "You should head to your meeting," I said, calm as a winter lake. "After tonight, you may discover just how far the bus routes reach." His lips moved, soundless. Snow gathered on his lashes, melting into rivulets down polished cheek bravado. Behind him, the digital timetable resumed blinking, delayed. Above him, the sky cracked with distant thunder, the storm's heart rolling closer. Carson opened the rear door of the Rolls, the cabin glow spilling golden onto the snow. I placed a hand on the leather, feeling the hum of an engine tuned to regal purr. Then I paused, turned slightly toward the nurse, the teenager, the others, whose silent company had steadied me. "Stay safe out here," I told them. The nurse nodded, eyes shining. The teenager pulled off one headphone, mouth round with awe. I stepped inside the sanctuary of walnut paneling and lamb's wool rugs. The door closed with a hush thump that felt like the world sealing a covenant. Outside, Ezra pounded on the window, but Carson moved to the driver's seat and with a flick, locked the doors. The Rolls eased forward, snow hissing beneath tires, like applause turning to whispers. As we pulled away, I watched Ezra shrink in the rear glass. First man, then outline, then blur, until the storm swallowed him. My heart should have quaked with grief. Instead, it beat a martial rhythm of purpose. Tonight was only the prologue. Carson's voice drifted through the intercom. "Madam, headquarters is awaiting your arrival for signatures. The board is assembled." I smiled into the dim. "Let them know I'm en route." And Carson? "Yes, madam?" "Take the long way. I'd like a clear view of the city I'm about to own." Outside, skyscrapers bustled like crystal spires, lights refracted through snow into prisms. Each gleam felt like a promise, or a challenge met. Yet beneath the triumph simmered questions. What retaliations would Ezra attempt? Which allies might he turn against me? And most urgently, could I protect the company, the employees, the legacy, from the fallout of a marriage detonated in public? The car curved onto Lakeshore Drive, city skyline shimmering beyond the frozen river. I pressed my palm to the glass, feeling the cold seep through, grounding me. I was not merely fleeing a cruel bus stop. I was steering my life's wheel into uncharted territory. A notification blinked across my phone. Urgent, boardroom update. I opened it. A single sentence glowed. Hostile counteroffer rumor from Van Holt Equity. Need directive. Van Holt, Ezra's primary client. He was moving already. My breath sharpened. The snow outside thickened, white sheets slicing the night. But inside the cabin, my mind blazed with strategies. Carson took the next exit, engine humming steady confidence. The Rolls felt like a ship cut from starlight sailing into turbulence. I straightened, tapped a voice memo for my legal team, and began drafting orders. My voice poured steady, measured, lethal. When I finished, I allowed myself one final glance at the storm. Let it rage. I had weather of my own to command. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I drew a breath so deep it hurt my ribs. Your claim dissolves under the prenuptial you insisted on, ironically to protect your own wealth. Clause 18. Assets derived from inheritance are separate property. He blanched but rallied. Legal battles bleed money. Van Holt's pocketbook dwarfs yours. I smiled, a small thing, dagger thin. Van Holt's pocketbook gapes when regulators peer inside. I wonder if Labor Justice Now knows their protest signs are financed by a hedge fund indicted for union busting in Oregon. His nostrils flared. You wouldn't. I already did, I whispered. My phone vibrated. Jonas's contact flashed. I answered. Jonas? His voice was urgent. Odie, you need to get back in. Vanity press outlets just ran with an anonymous tip linking you to money laundering. Stock chatter boards are lighting up. Ezra's smirk said, checkmate. I closed my eyes. Options raced. Then Camille burst through the lounge door. Her complexion had gone parchment white. "Miss Kingsley, Chair Parker needs you. Something's happened." She looked at Ezra and faltered, as if the air between us was a live wire. I followed her down the corridor. The boardroom doors stood open. Inside, directors clustered around laptops, faces pale. On every screen, the same headline blared: "Kingsley heiress in money laundering scandal. Van Holt offers lifeline." Stock tickers scrolled under the chyron, the share price already slipping. My pulse slammed. Ezra joined beside me, the triumphant tilt of his chin carving shadows across the carpet. Chair Parker spotted me. "Odessa, the optics are catastrophic. We delayed the vote. If shares fall another 5% at open, bond covenants will trigger. We could lose the entire leverage package." The floor seemed to tilt again. For a fraction of a second, I tasted the metallic bus stop wind on my tongue. Would Ezra truly raise an empire just to salt my name? Of course he would. Nothing about tonight was rational. He was past the point of calculation. This was crusade. Jonas's voice echoed in my earpiece, tinny but solid. "Kill switch?" I stared at the board, at Ezra's blazing gaze, at the flashing red arrows tugging the share price toward abyss. My hand hovered over my phone's biometric sensor. The kill switch would freeze every trading line, halt the hemorrhage, but it would also confirm to the market that something catastrophic lurked beneath. My thumb touched the sensor. Before the on-screen prompt even finished loading, the entire room blinked. Lights died, monitors extinguished, the crackle of the fireplace snuffed by a sudden whoosh of extinguishing gas as emergency protocols engaged. Darkness swallowed the boardroom before the echo of the gavel died. Darkness swallowed the boardroom before the echo of the gavel died. For one heart skip, there was nothing. No hum of fluorescent ballast, no hiss of HVAC, only our collective inhalation freezing in the sudden void. Then the emergency strobes blinked red, carving faces into startled masks. Directors scrambled from their chairs, papers fluttered like injured moths. Somewhere an alarm began a low, mournful keening, the sound of a cathedral organ stuck on a single note. I gripped the table edge to keep balance. In the intermittent crimson flashes, I saw Ezra pivot toward the door, hand diving for his phone. His plan had never required subtlety, only chaos. He would stride through this confusion, call a reporter, spin a tale of corporate malfeasance while Kingsley Haverton drowned in rumor. I leapt the gap between us and caught his sleeve. "You engineered this blackout," I hissed, breath pluming in the frigid air. "Tell me what you cut." A strobe haloed his sneer. "Why ask me? Ask your precious engineers. System resilience, wasn't it?" He shook off my grip and melted into the corridor, security guards too disoriented to block him. Camille dashed to my side, flashlight app casting a pale cone. "Server room trip sensors detect fire suppression discharge. The halon flooded automatically. Standard. Failsafe. But that means all drives are offline. The halon, colorless gas that kills flame, and data center staff if they don't evacuate swiftly." "Jonas." Panic knifed me. I pulled Camille by the wrist. "Primary data's down. We need the Aurora backup. Where's Jonas?" Her eyes widened. He ran toward ops when the first alarm sounded. Emergency strobes painted everything old film crimson. On off, on off. I plunged down the staircase, heels clattering. Camille kept pace. On floor 46, we burst into the operations wing. The glass walls of the server room glowed faint blue under battery lights. Inside, white racks sat mute, fans silenced by Halon's invisible blanket. Jonas crouched over a console, coughing, an inhaler clenched in trembling fingers. I slammed the door open and dragged him out before residual gas could seep. The chemical could suffocate in minutes. He wheezed, but managed a grin. Would have made Grandpa proud, right? Shutting down everything before the fire killed it. "No fire," my voice cracked. Sabotage. Ezra. Jonas's grin vanished. He starved the UPS batteries somehow. They shouldn't discharge all at once, unless someone issued an override. And the boardroom lost power simultaneously, Camille added. Her phone buzzed. She scanned a text, then blanched. Stock halted at 3%. Traders spooked by blackout. We've got maybe 20 minutes before aftermarket rumors tank us overseas. I turned to Jonas. Can we spin Aurora live? He steadied himself against the wall. Physical presence needed to swap the cold storage tapes. Once drives boot, I can redirect DNS and restore client portals. Aurora's 40 miles in a blizzard, Camille said. Carson can do it in 30. I pulled Jonas toward the fire stairs. We lose the company if we wait for weather to play nice. The parking deck behind Wolfridge Tower was an ice palace, pillars of frosted concrete, sodium lights flickering like failing candles. The rolls remained unmarred where we'd left it, but Ezra's SUV was gone. Carson met us at the door, already opening the rear passenger door for Jonas while Camille slid into the front. Fast as you can without attracting police, I instructed. Carson only nodded, dipped the throttle, and the Phantom ghosted into the storm. For 20 silent minutes, we navigated strangled expressways, taillights shimmering through the whiteout like dying coals. Camille relayed updates, press releases. From Van Holt blaming rogue heirs, tweets from bots amplifying the scandal. Jonas, laptop balanced across knees, coded through an air card to coax dead servers awake, but without disks, they were corpses. I stared out the window at suburbs buried under snowdrifts. Dark houses, Christmas lights still strung through January, had clawed them dull. Families slept unaware that supply chains feeding their grocery aisles were hanging by a frozen thread. Kingsley Haverton wasn't just legacy. It was bread, medicine, warmth. Ezra's vendetta gambled with strangers' pancreases and plumbers' winter fuel. Rage boiled so hot I trembled. Camille tapped her earpiece. Security just found empty halon cylinders in a service elevator. Someone swapped them manually. Fire suppression without a spark. Ezra had accomplices on custodial badges. My fingernails bit palm. He thinks if the company dies before midnight, the ED board will have no choice but to accept Van Holt's rescue offer at dawn. Jonas coughed into a scarf. Give me a live system and I'll bleed their algorithmic traders dry. I can inject a false positive on solvency. They'll withdraw the offer out of fear of inheriting liabilities. I glanced at him. That's gray hat at best, he shrugged. The world's not black and white tonight. The rolls barreled onto the express lane heading west, wipers lashing sideways like sabers. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered and flinched at the voice. Detective Isla Moran, major fraud. Ms. Kingsley, she said, tone crisp. Your husband alleges company funds are being transferred to offshore accounts. We have a warrant to secure electronic evidence. I'm en route to your offices now. Blood iced in my veins. Ezra had escalated to law enforcement. Accusations serious enough to justify seizure. With servers offline, investigators would find only digital corpse fragments, confirming his claims. Detective, our systems are down due to a technical fault, I said carefully. Any irregular logs will be artifacts, not evidence of wrongdoing. I expect your full cooperation on arrival, she replied, then ended call. I exhaled shakily. We need Aurora online before Moran reaches the servers. Carson glanced in rear view. 10 minutes. The Aurora site squatted behind Chainlink, a low concrete bunker shrouded in drifting snow like a wee pillbox. Carson slewed to a stop by the keypad gate. Jonas punched code, the gate groaned, and we tramped through knee-high drifts to a steel door. Inside, halogen lamps flickered to life, illuminating rows of server racks humming on generator diesel. Frost vapor trailed each breath. Jonas dashed to a control console, fingers skating across keys. Camille and I dumped spare tapes onto a cart, slotting them into robotic arms that accepted the cartridges with clunks aloud like rifle chambers. Minutes crawled. fans whirred. LEDs blinked green, amber, then steady white. Jonas's laptop chirped triumphantly. DNS propagated. Customer portals live. Give it 90 seconds and financial endpoints will authenticate. He swiveled to me. One more step. To neuter Van Holt, I can trigger an automated compliance audit. Shows our asset reserves exceed liabilities by 24%. Their emergency financing pitch will look like ambulance chasing. Do it. Camille juggled phone calls. PR drafts, analyst briefings, board reassurances. Snow battered the war roof overhead like artillery. The building might hold, I thought, but could my heart? Jonas tapped an enter key like a detonation switch. Audit begins now, but, Odessa, there's chatter in the darknet channels. Someone's offering a bounty for root credentials to Kingsley Haverton tonight. 500 Bitcoin. I closed my eyes. Ezra again. He's bleeding cash to hack us, Jonas said. If one mercenary cracks Aurora, they could wipe drives permanently. Then we stay until data replication completes, I decided. 14 minutes. At minute 7, the backup generators hiccuped. Lights dipped, fans sputtered. Jonas cursed, sprinted to examine a control panel. Fuel line, he shouted. Manual valve shut. Somebody's here. Carson drew a flashlight and a compact revolver from inside his coat. I blinked. Since when? Your grandfather never traveled undefended, he said, except in death. He handed me the flashlight, motioned Camille to crouch behind. Rax. Stay quiet. Footsteps crunched outside, muffled by snow. Then the crash of a side door smashed open. 2 silhouettes stormed in, armored in parkas, faces hidden behind ski masks. One carried a backpack, the other a crowbar. They didn't expect resistance. Carson's revolver barked, a warning shot into the concrete floor. Sparks flew. The intruders froze, then bolted back through the door. Carson pursued to the threshold but did not fire again. Honor or legal caution, Jonas hollered. Valve restored, generators stabilizing. Camille clutched my arm. Those men were professionals. Van Holt? Or Ezra's private crew, I said. But we just proved ourselves willing to shoot. They'll think twice. The rest of the backup completed without interruption. Jonas confirmed replication success and locked down the vault with triple-factor tokens. Even a quantum computer would need a decade to guess the keys. We left the bunker. Snow still hurled from the sky, but the horizon glowed faint lavender, the first wound of dawn. On the drive back, Camille relayed good news between dozing fits, analyst sentiment shifting, Van Holt stock slipping, media pivoting to the more salacious angle of marital sabotage. The narrative now played in my favor. I felt relief, yes, but also a terrible inevitability. Ezra would not retreat. He had scorched the old bridge between us and found delight in its heat. He would strike again, perhaps at my mother, my charities, any soul connected to my heart. My phone rang. This number I knew. I answered. Mother? Odessa. Her voice trembled. There are men at the gate. They say you sent them to secure the house. But their uniforms. They have Van Holt badges. My stomach fell through the floor. Mother, do not open the door. Go to the panic room, now. They're already inside. The line cut. I shouted to Carson. Change route. Eastwood Estates now. He didn't ask why. The Phantom whipped onto the interchange, V12 snarling like a wounded leviathan. Jonas and Camille stared at me, faces ghost white. I held the phone, shaking, dialing and redialing, each ring echoing in the hollow cavern of dread. Ezra had turned the battlefield from boardroom to bloodline, and for the first time that night, I feared the cost of winning might outstrip the empire itself. The Phantom devoured the interstate, its engine's basso growl a lullaby for warriors. Outside, dawn hemorrhaged a bruised rose along the eastern horizon, but the blizzard refused. Surrender. swirling like ghosts too furious to move on. Snow hissed against the armor-gloss paintwork. The car's cabin smelled of leather and adrenaline. Every breath tasted of static, like the air before lightning splits a tree in half. Camille's knuckles gleamed white on the dashboard grab handle. Jonas sat armed with a pair of high-gain antennas plugged into his laptop, configuring a rolling VPN carousel to cloak our geolocation. His screen cast blue-green code waterfalls across his spectacles, turning him into some Arctic fox among circuits. I dialed my mother's spare phone, voicemail again. 2 more attempts. By the third, a recorded message from the alarm company buzzed through. Perimeter breach detected at Eastwood Villas. Police dispatched. Estimated arrival, 9 minutes. 9 minutes could be an eternity or an eye blink, depending on the caliber of evil that had walked through her door. I swallowed the acid burn climbing my throat. Carson? ETA? He didn't look at me. His eyes were soldered to the white blur beyond the windshield. 5 minutes if God forgives black ice. I nodded. Then give him something to watch. Carson clicked the paddle shifter twice, dropping gears like guillotines. The rear end fishtailed, the traction control light strobing orange. Then, grip returned and the Phantom leapt forward, 1,000 exotic horses in stampede. The roadside pines bent like penitents under wind. My thoughts followed Ezra's likely playbook with brutal clarity. Kidnap? No. Too sloppy. Hostage intimidation? Plausible and effective. But his showmanship demanded spectacle. He would capture proof of me money laundering, hard drives, ledgers, anything to feed Detective Moran's warrant, then stage it in Mother's study so the press would photograph the scandal against our ancestral portraits. Symbolic decapitation of the Kingsley line. The snow thinned as we veered into the affluent collar counties where municipal plows ran through the night. Streetlights cast topaz halos over immaculate walls. Eastwood estates loomed ahead, wrought iron gates, hedgerows sculpted like chess pieces, faux Tudor rooftops stacked in rows like polite crowns. Blue strobes already bloomed up the lane. Local. Patrol cars boxed at the guardhouse. One officer waved frantically, teeth chattering in the dawn frost. Carson braked, window down. House 19. Kingsley? The officer asked. Yes, I answered before Carson could speak. Owner's daughter. Any update? He swallowed, glancing toward 2 more cruisers idling on the inner circle. Entry sensors tripped. No response inside. We're restricted to perimeter till tactical backup arrives. Meaning, they were budget suburban cops not trained for breach and clear. I flashed my shareholder's smile, sharp, persuasive. Delay will endanger an elderly woman. I authorize you to escort while we secure her. Protocol? Liability? They hesitated. Camille leaned across me, flipping her ID. Chief of Staff, Kingsley Haverton International. Gentlemen, when corporate supply chains collapse from sabotage, your precinct budget evaporates by summer. Help us now. They blinked, weighed political consequences, and waved us through. Mother's Manor crouched at the cul-de-sac like a ship in harbor. White brick, ivy sleeping beneath snow, windows dark behind storm shutters. The front door hung half ajar. Footprints scarred the pristine drift, heavy boots in, lighter prints out. My pulse hammered. We exited in formation. Carson first, revolver drawn. 2 officers flanking. Jonas clutching his laptop like a shield. Camille dialing 911 to update. Dispatch. I entered last, cold wind snapping my coat like sails. Inside, silence so thick it muffled even fear. Persian runners muffled our steps. The foyer chandelier swayed gently as though someone had brushed past moments ago. Glass littered the floor near the study, broken display case along the east wall where family medals once rested. I motioned left. Carson advanced, 1 officer at his shoulder. They vanished into the corridor. I turned right, toward the library where the panic room hatch hid behind floor-to-ceiling biographies. The scent of cigars lingered, my stepfather's long-extinguished habit, mixed with a new smell. Cold, metal, and ozone. "Mother?" I called, careful to keep voice calm. No answer. A muffled thud upstairs. I climbed, Jonas behind despite my protest. On the landing, we found strewn documents: mother's will, vaccine records, love letters from my father, rifled, tossed. A thief's frustration pattern, door to the master suite ajar. I edged it open. Mother stood at her vanity, wrists zip-tied, blood trickling from temple. Two men in ski masks rifled her jewelry armoire. A third crouched by the bed, prying at the floorboards, searching for a safe that did not exist. The scene froze at the creak of the hinge. For a blink, neither side moved. Then everything burst like shrapnel. Mother screamed my name. The nearest intruder swung a pistol toward me. I dove sideways as the muzzle flash white-blossomed, deafening roar in tight space. Jonas toppled behind the doorframe, laptop shattering. Rest instinct took over. I kicked the baseboard panel, thin. Drywall Papa had installed years ago, sending a shower of splinters into the gunman's legs. He stumbled, discharged another round into ceiling. Plaster snowed. Carson stormed up the stairs at that instant. A single shot from his revolver blew the nightstand lamp to shards inches from the second burglar's head. Electricity sparked. Room plunged into flickering gloom. The burglars bolted, trampling each other out the terrace doors. I rushed to Mother. Her lip quivered, but she stayed upright, tougher than any board director. Jonas cut her restraints with a letter opener. I held her while she sobbed soft, like a child startled awake. "They kept asking for the offshore drives, Dessa," she whispered. "I told them I didn't know. They didn't believe me." My heart splintered. "You were brave, Mama." Downstairs, sirens bloomed. Police reinforcements arrived. Carson, holstered weapon, oversaw clearing of the grounds. Paramedics treated Mother's gash. Officers collected shell casings, lifted footprints with tape. Detective Moran arrived next, trenchcoat flapping. She surveyed the scene, eyes narrowing at me. "Convenient shootout when you're under investigation." Camille stepped between. Us, handing over security camera footage streamed from cloud backup Jonas had thankfully set. The video displayed 3 masked intruders scaling the backyard fence at 06:12, brandishing tools. Time-stamped, geotagged, no editing possible. Moran's skepticism cracked. She ordered forensics and apologized to my mother. Small victory. With sunlight bleeding fully into the winter pall, I escorted Mother to the sunroom. Glass walls aglow, with dawn, wrapping her in a knitted blanket. She insisted on herbal tea instead of sedatives. Her voice steadied. "Odessa, your grandfather always told me, when wolves circle, light the bonfire so they see your teeth. What is your bonfire now?" I knelt, clasping her hand. "A shareholders' meeting in 3 hours. If I lock the vote, Ezra loses leverage. After that, I take him to court, not war." She frowned, the blanket's fringe trembling around her shoulders. "He has waged war on flesh, not legality. He broke into my home, injured me. Press charges. Make it criminal." I swallowed. "That may escalate, Mama. He'll have nothing left to lose." "Exactly," she said, steel in her voice. "Corner him in the light. Wolves fear fire." My mother, usually gentle, had become a general. I stood and promised charges would be filed before lunch. Jonas replaced his broken laptop with my spare. We set up a rapid digital forensics hub at the breakfast table while officers took statements. Carson phoned the rolls mechanic to patch bullet holes in the quarter panel. The car was scratched, but still royal. Camille pushed a French press toward me. "Board wants status at 9. They're rattled by the blackout, but the stock stabilized after your compliance audit posted. Van Holt shares down 4%. Thank you, Jonas." Jonas puckered lips in faux trumpet fanfare. My watch beeped 7:45. "Time to head back," I declared. "No delays." I kissed Mother's forehead, ignoring her tremble when we parted. "Your driver and 2 armed officers stay here. Panic room codes changed." She nodded, tears glistening unshed. "Bring the fire," she whispered. We returned to the rolls. Snow had slowed to a sullen drift, as though the storm, too, waited to see who won. On the drive, Camille coordinated a press conference for early afternoon, footage of me beside the detective, denouncing corporate violence. We would seize narrative control. Traffic choked as commuters crawled along salted lanes. Carson wove with surgeon precision, but progress was snailish. Jonas hacked traffic feeds, selected a sequence of green light overrides, and voila, boulevard cleared. We made Wolfridge Tower with 30 minutes to spare. The lobby buzzed with reporters. Security blocked them. I strode through the gauntlet, shoulders back, chin high. Every flashbulb stung like sleet, but I kept eyes forward. Remember your fire. Upstairs, Boardroom C smelled of stale coffee and fear. Directors perched around the big table, eyes flickering at my patched coat, the bullet hole nick in my collar. I let them stare. Chair Parker stood. "Ms. Kingsley, we reconvene due to fresh developments. Detective Moran just briefed us on the assault. Please present evidence you remain fit to lead." I placed Mother's blood-spattered scarf on the table, its crimson flecks blooming across the ivory weave. Gasps. I spoke quietly. Van Holt Equities operatives terrorized my family. They sabotaged our servers and sought fabricated proof of crimes I never committed. Yet Kingsley Haverton's systems are restored. Compliance audit verified solvency. Our shipping lanes operate at 99% capacity even after a citywide blackout. If bleeding for this company disqualifies me, then none of us deserve these seats. Silence stretched. Finally, Gabrielle Chen rose. "Motion to vote now." "Aye," several echoed. Ezra was absent. The seat he'd commandeered for Van Holt Council empty. That rattled them more than any speech. Minutes later, ballots tallied. Chair Parker raised her hand. "Majority in favor. Ms. Kingsley's proposal carries. Effective immediately, she holds controlling interest. Meeting adjourned. Relief." Not joy. Too much deboning remained, but relief. As directors filed out, Camille whispered, "Ezra's absence. Strategic retreat or something worse?" "Find him," I said. We hustled to operations. Jonas dove into security logs, triangulated. Phone pings. Ezra's device last seen near Lakeshore, abandoned warehouse district. Camille traced Van Holt's CEO flight manifest, a private jet fueled on standby at Midway. "If Ezra can't win, he'll run," Jonas said. "Or torch the boardroom," I muttered. Set contingency. We locked down tower. Only badge level 6. Access. Camille keyed orders. Alarms chimed. Maglocks hissed shut. My phone buzzed. Unknown. I answered on speaker Ezra's voice, low, taut. "You think victory tastes sweet? Check your mother's security feed." I froze. Jonas opened the home cameras, screen filled with feed from Mother's living room. She sat on sofa flanked by 2 of the same masked men, escaped earlier, guns. Visible. Officers unconscious on floor. My blood turned nitrogen cold. Ezra continued. "We trade assets like civilized people. You're controlling shares for your mother's life." Rage sparked, but I swallowed it. "You forget camera's record." Detective Moran listens. He chuckled hollow. "Try involving police and you inherit a corpse." Line clicked dead. I stared at Jonas. "Can you trace call in real time?" Already on it. Fingers flew. Routing through onion relays. But the voices came from inside Wolfridge Tower. What? Cold fingers gripped my spine. Camille's eyes widened. "He's here." Jonas nodded slowly. Mother's feed is timestamp delayed. He pre-recorded it. That hostage scene might already be resolved, one way or another. I couldn't breathe. Then Jonas's console beeped. Signal narrowing, sub-basement 3, the old freight. Tunnels. Ezra had stayed beneath our feet, and my mother's fate unknown. Carson appeared, weapon ready. I met his gaze. Bring the fire. I echoed my mother's words. Because wolves fear it most when it rises from the very ground they trod the mine. End of part 4, Dean Jaikon. The freight tunnels beneath Wolfridge Tower were relics of Prohibition, a maze of brick-lined corridors once used to ferry bootleg whiskey under river and rail. Most employees forgot they existed. Only archivists prized their steady temperature for paper storage. Tonight they promised something darker, a labyrinth where Ezra could vanish with any hostage or secret. I ran. Down service stairs smelling of damp limestone. Carson, Jonas, and 2 building guards thundered after me. Camille stayed topside to coordinate with Detective Moran, who was arraying tactical units at every exit. The sub-basement door groaned, on rust hinges. Cold air licked my face, tasting of iron and mildew. Our flashlights sliced through dust motes, tracing tunnels stretching north and east like veins into darkness. Overhead, century-old conduits dripped condensation, each drop echoing like a ticking clock. Jonas triangulated Ezra's call again, earbuds glowing blue. Signal strongest northeast, maybe 90 meters. We advanced, every footstep crunching old gravel. Pipes overhead thundered intermittently with water hammer. Each boom made my heart slam. Halfway, a voice crackled from a hidden speaker, Ezra's artificial calm. Turn left at the next junction, Odessa. Come alone, or the old woman dies. Carson. Grabbed my elbow. I shook him off. I'll go first, I whispered. Shadow me 40 paces back. He frowned, but nodded. I turned the corner. Passionless overhead strip lights flickered on, revealing a makeshift stage. Rugs, velvet rope, antique chaise lounge, like a grotesque theater set. On the chaise sat Mother, wrists bound, eyes red but defiant. Opposite her stood Ezra, suit. Coat gone, shirt spattered with soot as if he'd crawled through vents. A small device blinked red in his hand, a remote with a single toggle. Odessa, he greeted, voice echoing. Took my invitation. I forced steadiness. Release her and we negotiate. His smile was brittle glass. Negotiate? You already. Gutted me. Board votes, press buzz, my own firm disavows me. His finger caressed the toggle. I lost everything. So must you. I scanned the space. C4 charges glued to support pillars, wires snaking to a central junction box, enough to collapse a wing of the tower. My throat dried. You'll bury yourself too. Don't need to live when reputation is ash, he whispered. That's when Jonas's voice echoed behind me, loud, fearless. Hey, Ezra, want to see your crypto wallet evaporate? He held up phone. Digital display showed Van Holt's transfer ledger draining coin by coin into a burn address. Ezra's face paled. Impossible. Smart contract triggered by your sabotage, Jonas said, lying smoothly. Stop this and I'll hand you the private key. Ezra hesitated, toggle wavering. In that heartbeat, Carson fired. A single shot, hitting the remote, shattering plastic. Sparks burst, but dead battery slumped. Chaos. Ezra lunged, grabbing Mother as shield. Carson's second shot winged his shoulder. He screamed. Mother bit his wrist. He howled, releasing her. I sprinted, tackling him to ground. We rolled, pain, blooming where his elbow found my ribs. He reached for a knife. I hammered his hand against concrete till blade clanged away. Blood smeared my palms, his or mine. Sirens from corridor. Guards stormed in, cuffing him. Mother collapsed into my arms, sobbing harder for relief than pain. Detective Moran burst through. weapon drawn. She surveyed explosives, then Ezra. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, kidnapping, and terrorism." He laughed, high, broken. "She stole my company, my life." I knelt, heart thundering. "You relinquished them the moment you weaponized love." Moran's team swept the tunnel, disarming charges. We guided Mother upstairs, paramedics waiting. She refused stretcher, insisted on walking past Ezra. As she passed, she whispered, "Wolves fear fire." Outside, the blizzard was spent. Sunlight speared through parting clouds, making ice on the avenue glitter like scattered diamonds. Reporters surged, flashes strobed. I raised one hand, shielding Mother's eyes. In the lobby, employees applauded. Word of the vote and the ordeal had spread. I felt their hope rise, hot as the sun melting snow. For the first time since the bus stop, I allowed a full breath of victory, but midday brought new storms: regulators, board audits, employee anxiety. I convened crisis teams, structured communication, plans, allocated mental health leave for staff traumatized by explosives found below their feet, hours blurred. Mid-afternoon, Jonas tapped my shoulder. "We need you in the broadcast studio." I frowned. "Studio?" He led me to the 12th floor where we host investor live streams. Camera crew prepped, teleprompter loaded. Jonas gestured. "Your address to global staff. 6 continents logged in." I inhaled, counted 3, stepped onto platform. Red light blinked. Live. "Good day," I began, voice steady but resonant inside chest. "Some of you awoke to rumors, others to sirens. Let me set the record straight. Kingsley Haverton stands resilient. We endured sabotage yet fulfilled every critical delivery. Not because of one error, but because of 83,000 professionals who refuse to let darkness chart our routes. We will institute a new security task force, invest in mental health support, and expand our profit-sharing program, effective next quarter. Because ownership should be collective, not held hostage by ego." Applause emojis cascaded across monitors worldwide. Afterwards, Camille wrapped me in a hug thinner than paper. She whispered, "Stock up 15%. Analysts hail you as the Iron Phoenix." I almost laughed, because inside I felt not iron but raw skin. Night fell violet. I visited Mother in hospital suite. Concussion mild, vitals strong. We shared chamomile tea. She asked softly, "What next?" "Court dates, board reorganization, cultural healing," I answered. "Then maybe rest." She squeezed my hand. "Rest is earned." On the drive home to my downtown loft, I asked Carson to take the scenic route along the river. Street lamps shimmered off black water. City skyline glowed like a circuit board powered by millions of hearts. I thought back to the bus stop, Ezra's door slamming, snow biting my ankles. That single choice, stepping out instead of begging back in, rewrote an empire. We stopped at the same shelter. It sat quiet, no commuters now. I stepped out, pressed my palm to cold plexiglass. The wind carried far-off laughter from bar patios where people celebrated Friday lives. Jonas texted, "Servers stable, no breaches." "Sleep." Camille added, "Press Adore's photo of you hugging your mom." I smiled, slipped phone into pocket. Middle of part 5. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. 3 weeks later, the board convened to finalize corporate charter amendments. Detective Moran's testimony had dismantled Van Holt's grip. The firm faced massive fines. Ezra awaited trial without bail. I bore mixed feelings, relief cloaked. In grief for a man I once loved. He wrote no letters. His lawyers signaled insanity defense. In that vacuum, Kingsley Haverton thrived. A joint venture with a Scandinavian green shipping startup sailed maiden voyage. Employees named the vessel Odyssey Phoenix via company poll. Play on my name, nod to resilience. Yet unease lingered. Financial press dug into deeper layers. Why did a logistics empire tolerate such weak internal security? I launched a transparency initiative, granting journalists controlled access to operations centers. Each tour ended with technicians demonstrating reinforced safeguards, the power of truth displayed, not whispered. One dusk, as audits wrapped and camera crews packed, I rode the freight elevator alone to the newly refurbished server floor. The halon scars were gone, racks humming crisp. I traced a finger over stainless steel door where bullet hole had pitted. They'd polished it out, but a slight dimple remained. A reminder, like a healed bone, never perfect. My reflection in the metal looked older, eyes etched with nights unslept, but steadier. I whispered into empty air. "Grandpa, the freight is safe." Doors opened. Jonas leaned against corridor wall, holding 2 decaf lattes. "Knew I'd find you here," he said. We clinked cups. He sighed. Cyber forensics traced the bounty to an offshore wallet in Cayman. Not Ezra, Van Holt board members acting. Rogue. I shook head. More wolves. But we have a firewall of 12,000 employees freshly trained in zero-trust protocols, he said. Wolves will starve. Outside, April thaw melted the last blizzard drifts. I stepped onto terrace overseeing city. Breeze carried scent of budding linden trees. Below, traffic lights stitched rubies and emeralds along avenues. Not long ago, I'd been at mercy of those lights, praying for bus in a storm. Now I set schedules for cargo that girdled continents. Yet power tasted different than I imagined. Not champagne sparkle, but weight, responsibility for lives that load freight. Drive rigs, feed families. I vowed, never forget the bus stop chill. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Cautious, I answered. Silence, then a child's voice. "Mrs. Kingsley, this is Ava, your husband's niece. Uncle Ezra asked me to call." Blood rushed my ears. He said to tell you, "You still don't know everything." He says there's another tunnel. Line clicked dead. I stared across skyline, the city suddenly a chessboard again. Another tunnel. What did Ava mean? A threat, a warning, or a riddle planted by a mind unspooling in jail? Jonas watched my face blanch. "What?" I told him. He straightened. "Ezra shouldn't have phone access. Someone smuggled it, or someone else plays ventriloquist." Fear rekindled like coals beneath ash. I whispered, "Trace the call." He was already dialing InfoSec. Far below, the river lights flickered as if on cue. First blue, then red, then darkness sweeping one by one along the embankment. A localized blackout crawling our way, devouring bulbs like midnight serpents. Jonas muttered, "Grid anomaly, centered on lower freight docks. Another tunnel, another plan." The battle was not over. My pulse quickened. The terrace lights extinguished, plunging us into shadows silhouetted against starlight. Somewhere underground, maybe beneath the bus stop where it all began, a fuse had been relit, and the Empire would need its firebrand yet again. End of Part 5. Again, the lights along the river winked out, a domino line of darkness racing toward the heart of my city, and with each lamppost that fell black, the throb of dread inside my ribs synced to its rhythm. Somewhere below those streets, perhaps beneath, the very bus stop that birthed this war, a fuse had been relit, and every instinct screamed it was already sparking toward catastrophe. He gripped the terrace rail as if clenching the throat of fate, forcing my breath steady while the skylines glitter-guttered. 50 floors below, emergency generators roared awake in Wolfridge Tower, but the surrounding blocks, warehouses, freight depots, forklift yards, drowned in shadow. Sirens flared like wounded animals lost in a cave. Jonas pressed his phone to his ear, the blue of its screen painting hollow crescents beneath his eyes. Infrastructure Control Center confirms a localized cyber attack, he muttered. Grid segmentation protocol isolating, but the bad code still propagating through the riverfront substations. Is it Van Holt? I asked, though the question felt smaller than the looming reality. Not directly. Encrypted signatures don't match any we've logged. He swallowed. Whoever it is learned from their failure last time. They're inside the SCADA layer now, weaving in like ghosts. The wind whipped hair across my mouth. Can you isolate which substation they're targeting? Trying. Without full credentials, it's guesswork. I turned, sprinting back, into the floor's command center. Camille was already at the crisis console, a half-dozen analysts crowding around her. Carson had left to coordinate building security, but appeared again almost instantly, breath fogging in the cool, conditioned air. Multiple calls from downtown precincts, Camille reported. Traffic lights freezing green on all vectors, gridlock. Building. And the freight docks just lost power to their hydraulic locks. Containers are stuck mid-transfer. I glanced at the wall map, red icons blinking. The docks weren't just steel and water, they were arteries pumping goods inland. Shut them down in blizzard-wounded January and produce rotted factories stalled. Jonas's voice cut through. Found the epicenter, substation Delta 7, right at the old Kingsley East Tunnel junction. His eyes met mine. The other. Tunnel Ezra hinted at. Could it still house legacy lines? I asked. He nodded slowly. Blueprint shows decommissioned fiber loops passing through its vault. If someone spliced in, they'd bypass new firewalls entirely. Carson spun a keyring around his gloved finger, the gesture of a man who'd already planned the route. Service elevator to garage, then 2-block walk. But the blackout means no street lamps. We'll need headlamps. I'm coming too, Camille said, ignoring my raised brow. Someone has to manage comms on site. Radio grid here is overloaded. We geared up. High-vis jackets, portable batteries, breath mints for adrenaline burn mouth. I tucked the small bronze Kingsley crest, my grandfather's, into coat pocket, a talisman of improbable survivals. The streets were a cathedral of darkness, windows reflecting patrol flashers like shattered stained glass. Snowmelt pooled, nearly freezing again in the chill, turning asphalt to mirrors of black ice. Our boots slid as we jogged, headlamps cutting shaky cones. Delta 7 squatted behind chain link, squat concrete box, its yard littered with idle maintenance, vans and a generator that should have been thrumming but sat silent, icicles dripping from fuel cap. The front door hung ajar, padlock sheared. Carson signaled halt. We listened. Inside, the faint whir of fans, a glow like foxfire escaping cracks, emergency floodlights or something else. He drew his sidearm, pivoted in. I followed, Jonas and Camille just behind. The vestibule reeked of ozone. Rows of switchgear blinked. Amber, alarm panels scrolling errors. Unauthorized override, grid loopback. At the far end, a steel door to the cable vault stood propped open by a toolbox. Wires snaked across threshold. We edged closer. Voices drifted up. 2 men, maybe 3, staccato anxiety. Patch still not stable. If we bleed backfeed now, it trips regional breakers. Timetable moved up. Do it. I peeked around the jam. Below, in the vault pit, crouched a trio of technicians with laptop and splice kit. But these weren't line workers. They wore black BDUs, insignias removed. A battery pack hummed between them, feeding power into a portable fiber injector. Attached, a small steel briefcase with antennas and blinking diodes, no doubt the bad code machine ravaging SCADA. Jonas drew breath to call out. I stopped him. If they see us, they kill the feed. And maybe the grid, Carson whispered. I'll flank. But before he could step, Camille's radio chirped, loud, unavoidable, A dispatcher seeking update. The solder-scented silence cracked. One intruder looked up, eyes meeting mine. "Contact!" he bellowed, ripping a Glock from hip. Two others grabbed rifles from crate. Carson fired first, a warning into concrete that ricocheted neon sparks. They dove behind switchgear, returning shots that whined off panel doors. Jonas cursed, yanking me back. Bullets zipped overhead, shredding aluminum raceways. This substation wasn't built like tunnels. One stray round into a capacitor bank and we'd be vapor. Camille shouted through radio for backup. I met Jonas's gaze. "We can't gunfight. We need to yank their fuse." He scanned schematics framed on wall. "Main supply bus is overhead. Manual kill would drop frequency, isolate their loop. But we'd cut power to 250,000 customers. Better blackouts than sabotage, I thought." "Where?" He pointed upward. An orange insulated bar the size of my thigh, 30 feet above in mezzanine. A manual lever hung on catwalk. Carson laid covering fire, driving shooters deeper into vault. Jonas and Camille dashed to ladder. I followed, heart hammering, clanged up rungs. Midway, a round smashed through rung just below my boot. Metal shrieked. I slipped, catching side rail by fingertips. Pain shot along shoulder. Jonas hauled me up by elbow. Camille already on catwalk, straining at lever, but safety clasp locked with coated pad. She hissed, "Need override key." Jonas ripped off his smartwatch strap, jammed charging pins into pad contacts, sent a surge. Sparks flew. Lock popped. He pulled lever, but it wouldn't budge. Mechanical interlock. I remembered training. A two-person twist to prevent accidental shutoff. I braced opposite side, counted 3, and we heaved. The bar clunked down with a banshee shriek. All lights died. Second later, UPS beacons glowed red, casting hellfire hue. Below, men cursed. Their laptops went dark. We had them blind. But our beam channels still lit us like targets. Carson's voice echoed, "Intruders retreating North Tunnel." North Tunnel, the legacy lines into River Cargo Labs. I shouted down, "Follow but don't engage. They may plant charges." He nodded, giving chase. Jonas checked phone. No cell service, obviously. We just unplugged ourselves. Must repower. Critical load soon. "First we chase ghosts," I replied. We squeezed through a maintenance hatch into lower conduit corridor. Smelled of river silt and diesel, footprints fresh in grime. Jonas texted building incident team via mesh handheld. Short-range radio, unaffected. Strobe flashlight ahead. Carson signaled silent, then pointed. Intruders planting satchel charges along fiber trunk. Their objective, not just grid sabotage, but full data link meltdown. Permanent sever of Kingsley Logistics backbone. "Explosives rigged to remote cell trigger," Jonas whispered. "If they lose signal, auto-detonate." Camille's face tightened. "We cut comms already. Timer may have started." Clock ticked louder in my mind. I stepped into corridor, voice cutting the shadows. "Control your fire. There's nowhere else to run." One intruder wheeled with rifle. I flinched. But Carson's shot hit his shoulder, spinning him. Another bolted, clutching detonator. Camille hurled pipe wrench, an improbable, perfect arc. It struck his wrist. Device skittered across concrete. Jonas dove, sliding baseball style to grab remote. But the third saboteur, unseen, burst from alcove, taser sword of blue arcs aimed at Jonas's neck. I screamed, warning too late. Electrodes bit Jonas's jacket. He convulsed, collapsing. Taser man lifted pistol. I drew breath that tasted of pennies and charged. Slamming full body into him, we crashed into wall. Pistol discharged into ceiling. Sparks cascaded. My shoulder burned from earlier strain, but adrenaline numbed. We grappled. He was heavier, but I knew weak points. A knee to groin. His grip loosened. I wrenched pistol, struck his temple butt first. He fell. Heart pounding, I rolled Jonas over. His eyelids fluttered. I'm okay, he gasped, twitchy but conscious. Camille cuffed the wounded saboteur. Carson secured others. Police sirens echoed distantly, backup finally nearing. I looked at detonator device, screen blinking timer. 0107, 0106. Failsafe. Triggered by comm loss, Jonas croaked. Must input cancel code. Do you have it? No, but maybe we can spoof satellite handshake to trick device into seize control signal. Time, Carson urged. Jonas connected phone via OTG cable. Fingers trembling. Need open sky for antenna. We raced upward through hatchway, emerging into open substation yard. Snow fell again in lazy confetti. Jonas hoisted detonator overhead, phone tether blinking. Lines of code scrolled. 028, 027, Camille whispered. A prayer. Carson watched gate for police entry. 12, 0011. Jonas exhaled. Push remote diagnostic echo. Now. Timer froze at 0007. My knees buckled. I nearly vomited relief. Jonas laughed weakly, tears freezing on lashes. Camille hugged him. He winced at taser bruises but hugged back. Police barreled in, weapons drawn. We surrendered intruders and evidence. Pike, lead detective, recognized pattern. Mercenaries from private security firm with known Van Holt links. As officers processed scene, I caught movement near fence, small silhouette fleeing into dark. A female intruder in sleek coat, face half hidden. She locked eyes with me, ice-gray irises eerily reminiscent of Ezra's. Then she vanished behind storage containers. I chased but lost sight. Only footprints remained, swallowed by new snow. Back. At tower an hour later, we debriefed. IT logs revealed saboteurs had attempted to inject algorithm that would cause container cranes to misalign loads, devastating ships and waterfront jobs. I slumped in conference chair, exhaustion pounding. Camille poured coffee, hands shaking little. Jonas had EKG patches on chest, but typed code to restore grid. Carson filed ballistic report. Yet my mind lingered on the woman's gaze. Ezra's half-sister? Corporate rival? And the encrypted signature Jonas flagged. Unmatched. Could there be a phantom stakeholder manipulating both Ezra and Van Holt for deeper motives? Before dawn's flush, an anonymous email pinged my inbox. Subject: The wolves are legion. Body simply: Tunnel number 3 opens when the Phoenix sleeps. Attached: Photo of me at the bus stop weeks earlier. The exact moment I stepped into snowfall after being abandoned. Someone had been watching from the very beginning. I stared until lines blurred. The war's prologue had ended. A saga of shadows stretched ahead. But part of me, the part forged in ice that night, felt ready. Firebrands burn brighter when night deepens. I would not be doused. Yet as first light crawled beyond skyline, exhaustion finally claimed me. I slid from chair, drifting into sleep cradled by Carson's steady arms. Dreams churned. Bus stops morphing into tunnels, Rolls Royce. Diving into river, phoenixes aflame yet soaring, until siren of incoming call yanked me awake. Hospital switchboard. My mother. Her voice calm but urgent. Odessa, you must come. Ezra's lawyer requested visitation rights early, with a mediator. Who? She hesitated. His sister, someone he calls Sarah. She claims she holds the final key to stopping the wolves, and she will speak only to you. My pulse kicked. The woman by the fence. Ezra had a sister I never met. A secret kept all these years. I rose, body aching but mind on fire. Next confrontation stood not in tunnels or boardrooms, but across glass of prison visitation. A chance to peel back last veil, or spring newest trap. Either way, the story was far from done. Again. The word echoed as I stepped through the penitentiary's metal detectors, a déjà vu of cold thresholds, as though each gateway repeated the same challenge. Prove you deserve the fire you carry. Chain-link shadows striped the corridor, like barred sunlight. Every clack of my heels against concrete felt too loud, too alive. 2 weeks had crawled since the substation siege. Weeks of depositions, indictments, round-the-clock forensics. Kingsley Haverton's stock rebounded. Workers returned to cranes. The city grid hummed steady. Yet the anonymous emails persisted, taunting lines of verse about wolves and sleeping phoenixes. Always time-stamped 03:33 a.m., always accompanied by photographs of places I'd been hours earlier. Someone watched and waited. Now I followed a guard toward Visitation Bay 3, heartbeat drumming ribs. Behind reinforced glass sat Ezra, orange jumpsuit bright as warning flare. Beside him, the woman I'd glimpsed at Delta 7, tall, ash blonde, posture regal despite cheap plastic chair. Her eyes met mine. No hostility, only calculation. We picked up phones. Ezra's gaze slid away, shame eclipsing rancor. Sarah, his half-sister, I'd learned, spoke first, voice soft as snowfall. Odessa Kingsley, I presume. You navigate infernos well. Better than bus routes, I replied dryly. Why summon me? She folded manicured fingers. Because the wolves you wounded will lick their burns then strike elsewhere. Van Holt is merely a mask. The consortium behind them, Oberon Circle, hunts, monopolies to carve and sell. They invested in Ezra's downfall as test balloon. I studied her. And you? Pack member or outcast? Reluctant insider. My trust fund bound to Circle's equity. When Ezra begged their help to ruin you, they leveraged him. But he failed. Now they pivot. They'll buy Kingsley's distressed competitors, hacking supply chains until regulators break your hold. Ezra's cracked baritone cut in. I never meant blood, but they escalated. His bruise-shadowed eyes begged redemption. I contained storm within. Proof? Sarah slid portfolio beneath glass, a conduit slot. Inside, dossiers, bank ledgers, minutes from clandestine meetings. Jonas would salivate. Why give me this? I asked. Because Circle indicted my family the moment Ezra was arrested. They seized our assets as collateral. Desperation clarifies loyalty. She leaned closer. I want immunity and a board seat, under you. In exchange, I testify, and I deliver the access codes to Circle's offshore accounts. Shut them down. My pulse quickened. Alliance with a saboteur? Yet strategy murmured. Keep enemies visible. Deal. Or no, she pressed. I inhaled. Conditional. Full cooperation, polygraph, asset recovery, board seat probationary, non-voting. For 3 years, she smiled. Negotiator to the end. Agreed. Ezra's shoulders slumped, the fight gone. Des. I'm sorry. Tears welled. I believed him strangely. I will ensure fair trial, I said. And therapy. He nodded, lips trembling. A guard tapped. Session ended. As I left, Sarah's final whisper crackled through line. Tunnel. 3 is digital. The Circle's true lair sits in clouds, not bricks. Follow the ledger. Every wolf prints tracks in snow eventually. Back at Wolfridge Tower, War Room buzzed. Jonas scanned Sarah's documents into secure vault, AI models cross-matched names. Camille arranged meeting with federal investigators. Carson oversaw new threat intel division staffed by veterans. We initiated Project Bonfire, multi-agency, sting to expose Oberon Circle's shell cascade. Sarah guided investigators through labyrinthine trusts, each revelation sharpening the noose. Weeks turned to months, a spring of subpoenas, server seizures, midnight warrants. My calendar became a map of conference rooms and courtrooms. Yet each dawn, I reminded myself of bus stop snow, of the vow to shield those who move the world's freight unseen. On May 7th, Department of Justice unsealed indictments. Oberon Circle. Executives charged with racketeering, market manipulation, cyber terrorism. Stock markets trembled, then roared approval. Kingsley Haverton's resilience became case study in Harvard white papers. Sarah kept her word. Her testimony dismantled Circle's crypto vaults, funneling billions back to restitution funds. Ezra, in plea agreement, received reduced sentence, 5 years mandatory psychiatric care. At sentencing, he asked the judge to allow bookstore labor in prison, citing my grandfather's love of literature. I attended, offered no objection. Outside courthouse, I found him in transport cuffs. For the first time since that snowy bus stop, he met my gaze without armor. "The wolves are caged," he said. "Don't become one while guarding the flock." "I won't," I answered. "Fire warms. It needn't scorch." Summer unfurled. Freight volumes hit record highs. Kingsley Haverton inaugurated scholarship fund for dock workers' children. The Odyssey Phoenix returned from circumnavigating. Globe on biofuel. Crews cheering beneath rainbow water cannon salute. Yet victory tasted quieter than I imagined. Not champagne effervescence, but cool spring water after long march. Responsibility remained heavy, but no longer a chain, more a mantle I chose daily. One August evening, I visited the original bus stop, now refurbished with new shelter, gardens, security lights. City plaque read, "Site of the Phoenix Turn," where perseverance forged a path for thousands. Someone left roses at its base. I touched plexiglass that once framed my trembling reflection. Wind carried scent of honeysuckle instead of diesel. A young couple waited for bus, laughing. I offered them, "Ride in my hybrid sedan," the roles retired except for ceremonial use. They declined politely. The city buses, they said, were running on schedule again, thanks to Kingsley Haverton Logistics. I smiled, stepping back as bus arrived. Doors hissed, passengers boarded. As it pulled away, its rear digital screen flashed company ad, "We move futures." The words shimmered in twilight like promise kept. Later that night, from penthouse balcony, I gazed at skyline. Lights no longer looked like vulnerabilities to guard, but stars in constellation we'd drawn, together. Jonas joined with 2 mugs of tea, Camille on hollow call raising toast from Singapore office, Carson leaning against doorframe, quiet sentinel. We spoke of mundane triumphs, new ecoport in Ghana, AI crane reducing accidents, scholarship recipients, sending first semester selfies. The empire felt less like fortress, more like garden. When conversation lulled, I told them I planned sabbatical, 3 months on sailing freighter to understand crew lives. They grinned. Jonas jokingly booked Wi-Fi packages. Camille promised to keep board tame. Carson insisted on security detail disguised as deckhands. "Firebrands need stoking," they teased. I laughed until tears blurred city lights. Tears of gratitude, not grief. As midnight bells chimed across river, an email pinged, anonymous. For heartbeat, old fear returned. I opened it. A single image of Phoenix against starlit sea, wings ember bright. Caption, "Long may you fly." No threat, no riddle, just benediction, perhaps from someone once a wolf, now wandering fields beyond packs. I closed laptop, breathed night air. The journey from broken bus stop to this balcony stretched short in memory, yet vast in lesson. Strength isn't forged in boardrooms or bank ledgers, but in choice to rise each time darkness falls. I turned to friends. "Let's rest," I said. "Tomorrow we sail." And beneath the quiet hum of distant freight engines, the city exhaled with me, ready for dawn. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.